In the twilight of a great global struggle, naval engineering reached its zenith. New, sophisticated vessels prowled the depths. Among these was the German U-boat U-1206, a marvel of modern mechanics, one of the last of its kind. Its crew was a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh-faced young men, all trusting their lives to the steel beast. Every dial, every lever, every pipe was a testament to precision engineering, designed for maximum efficiency deep beneath the waves. This submarine was equipped with the latest technology, intended to give it a decisive edge in the silent underwater theater. But a vessel's strength is only as great as its weakest component, a lesson the crew of U-1206 would learn. Its fate would not be sealed by an enemy torpedo or a depth charge, but by something far more mundane. This is the story of how one of the most advanced submarines of its day was defeated by its own toilet. A tale of over-engineering, human error, and a catastrophic failure in the most unexpected of places. The final bizarre chapter in the life of U-boat 1206 begins not with a bang, but with a flush. Early submarines had a simple sanitation problem. They could only discharge waste when surfaced or at shallow depths. To operate deeper and for longer, German engineers developed a new, high-pressure toilet that could function at great depths. It was a marvel of engineering, a miniature airlock system designed to eject waste against immense water pressure. The procedure was incredibly complicated, involving a precise sequence of opening and closing interconnected valves. Waste was routed through a series of chambers, where it was blasted out with compressed air. Get the sequence wrong, and you wouldn't just make a mess, you could potentially compromise the entire vessel. Because of this complexity, a specialist was trained on every U-boat, solely responsible for operating the advanced lavatory. This system was a perfect example of over-engineering, a solution so complex it created its own set of problems. The pressure to perform flawlessly was immense, as a single mistake could have immediate and disastrous consequences for everyone aboard. For the U-1206, this intricate piece of plumbing would become the catalyst for its untimely end. April 1945. The U-1206, under the command of Kapitänleutnant Karl Adolf Schlitt, departs from its base in Norway. This was its very first patrol. The crew was green, and the submarine was fresh from the shipyard. Its mission, to patrol the coasts of Britain, a dangerous assignment deep in contested waters. The command dive is given, and the colossal machine gracefully slips beneath the cold gray waves of the North Sea. Inside, the world shrinks to a cramped, dimly lit tube of steel, filled with the hum of machinery. Life settles into a tense routine of watches, maintenance, and waiting. Every sound from outside is a potential threat. Days pass. The U-1206 glides silently through the depths, a predator in its element, its crew on constant alert. The submarine operates flawlessly. The engines hum, the instruments are steady, and morale is high. Everything is proceeding as planned. 8 days into its patrol, U-1206 is operating at a depth of 200 feet, just off the coast of Scotland. It is here, in the silent darkness, that a simple human need will trigger a chain reaction of disaster. The commander of U-1206, Karl Adolf Schlitt, found himself in need of the submarine's facilities. Instead of calling for the designated toilet specialist, the captain decided to operate the complex mechanism himself. Perhaps it was impatience, or perhaps it was overconfidence in his understanding of the vessel's systems. He entered the small, cramped compartment that housed the infamous high-pressure head. Inside, he was faced with a confusing array of levers, valves, and instructions. He consulted the operating manual, but the procedure was far from intuitive. Each step had to be perfect. Something went wrong. The system did not respond as expected. The mechanism was stuck. Unable to solve the problem himself, the captain was forced to call for assistance. An engineer, not the toilet specialist, hurried to the captain's aid, entering the small compartment. Now 2 men were in the tiny space, trying to decipher the puzzle of the malfunctioning toilet, under pressure to fix it quickly. The engineer, thinking he knew the system, decided to bypass the usual procedure to clear the blockage. There were 2 critical wheels, an inlet valve and an outlet valve. They were never to be opened at once. In his haste, the engineer made a fateful mistake. He opened the outer sea valve. This directly connected the submarine's interior to the crushing pressure of the deep ocean. Instantly, a torrent of icy seawater, mixed with the compartment's contents, erupted from the toilet. The force was immense, a high-pressure jet flooding the small room in mere seconds. Panic ensued. The engineer and captain scrambled to close the valve, but the pressure was too great. The small leak had become a major breach. Water overflowed from the compartment into the main corridor. Other crew members, hearing the commotion and seeing the flood, rushed to help, their faces etched with alarm. A single simple error had just doomed the U-1206, but the worst was yet to come. Directly beneath the forward crew quarters and the toilet compartment lay one of the submarine's most vital and vulnerable areas. This was the battery room, housing huge lead-acid batteries that powered the submarine while it was submerged. Salt water began to pour through the floorboards, dripping and then gushing onto the battery terminals below. When seawater makes contact with battery acid, a dangerous chemical reaction occurs, producing clouds of poisonous chlorine gas. The gas is heavier than air, and it began to fill the lower decks of the submarine immediately. Crew members began to choke and gasp. The air became toxic, searing their lungs and blinding their eyes. The flood was a problem, but the poisonous gas was a death sentence. The submarine was becoming a tomb. The chemical reaction also risked causing a massive hydrogen explosion that would tear the submarine apart from the inside. Captain Schlitt was now faced with an impossible choice: stay submerged and suffocate, or surface and face the enemy. There was only one option to save his crew. He had to get them to fresh air immediately. The order was given. "Not offsteig, emergency surface!" The klaxons blared throughout the compromised vessel. Engineers scrambled to blow the ballast tanks, forcing all remaining compressed air into them to push the submarine upwards. The submarine, now heavy with floodwater and crippled by gas, began a steep, jarring ascent. Men struggled to hold on as the deck angled sharply towards the sky. The groaning of the hull was deafening. Water sloshed violently inside the hull, further damaging equipment and adding to the chaos. In the control room, the depth gauge needle spun rapidly backwards as they rocketed towards the surface. This was not a controlled ascent. It was a desperate, explosive burst for survival. With a tremendous roar of displaced water, the U-1206 breached the surface like a great whale. It wallowed on the waves, crippled and exposed under the gray Scottish sky, just 10 miles from the coast. The crew had escaped the toxic gas below, but they had surfaced into an entirely new kind of danger. As the crew scrambled onto the deck, gasping for air, they were dangerously exposed. The submarine was unable to dive, its batteries were compromised, and its systems were failing. They had surfaced in broad daylight, right in the middle of a heavily patrolled coastal area. It didn't take long. The distinct shape of a surfaced U-boat was an unmissable target. The distant drone of engines grew louder. Allied patrol aircraft were converging on their position. The hunters had become the hunted. The submarine was a sitting duck with no way to defend itself or escape. The aircraft began their approach. For the crew of U-1206, there were no good options left. Captain Schlitt knew that capture of his advanced U-boat was not an option. He had one final duty. He could not let the secrets of the Type VIIC fall into enemy hands. The submarine had to be destroyed. With Allied planes bearing down, the captain gave his last order: abandon ship and prepare to scuttle. The crew worked frantically, destroying sensitive equipment and codebooks to protect their secrets. Charges were set, and seacocks were opened throughout the vessel to flood the remaining compartments. One by one, the sailors abandoned their steel home, climbing into inflatable rafts on the choppy sea. The planes above ceased their direct approach, circling to observe the unfolding drama. As the last man, Captain Schlitt took one final look at his command before joining his crew. Slowly, the U-1206 began to sink. The bow dipped under and water washed over the deck. From the life rafts, the crew watched in silence as their vessel went to its final resting place. The conning tower was the last to go, slipping beneath the waves with a final sigh of escaping air. Then there was nothing but the gray sea, the life rafts, and the circling planes. The U-1206, a pinnacle of naval technology, was gone, sunk without a single shot fired by the enemy. Of the 50-man crew, most survived the initial sinking, but their ordeal was not over. Some were picked up by local fishing boats, others made the perilous journey to the Scottish coast. Tragically, 3 men did not survive the journey to shore after landing on the rocky coast. The rest, including Captain Schlitt, became prisoners, their part in the global events over. Captain Schlitt survived and lived a long life, forever tied to the bizarre fate of his first and only command. For decades, the U-1206 lay undisturbed on the seabed, its strange story becoming a minor historical footnote. Then, in the 1970s, the wreck was discovered by divers during work on an oil pipeline. It rests there today, 230 feet down, a silent monument to a moment of profound, almost comical failure. The story serves as a stark reminder that in complex systems, the smallest, most overlooked detail can lead to catastrophe. A lesson in humility, proving that even the mightiest machines can be brought low by the most basic of human errors.